Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to winter. Today is March 10th. I'd like to call this committee of the whole meeting to order. Patrick, could you please call the roll?
Happy to. Trustee Orth.
Here.
Trustee Whitaker.
Here.
Trustee Fowler.
Here.
Trustee Gallen.
Here.
Trustee Yedis. Trustee Elfman.
Here.
President Mendrick.
Here. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to discuss the proposed fiscal year 27 budget. Just to give you a little overview, the village fiscal year runs annually from May 1st through April 30th. In advance of conducting the public hearing for the proposed fiscal year 2027 budget, the document is presented for review and discussed at the Committee of the Whole meeting, which is happening tonight. Requested changes will be incorporated in the document and presented at the March 24th public hearing. So that is what we are up to this evening. The first item of business is any public comment. If anyone has anything they'd wish to say, please approach the podium. Okay, going once. Okay, we'll move on then. Patrick, I'm going to turn this over to you, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So really the purpose for tonight is especially as I look at the audience, everybody here has kind of been through this before, so you understand a lot of it. So I won't go into a great level of detail, some of this background information. President Mendrick has already brought up our budget process and how it works. And really the important thing for us is remember that the village operates under a system of funds. So it's much like your home account, only we have multiple checking accounts. All of them tie back to one major account, our general operating account, which we call the general fund. But you'll see tonight as we go through, I've listed our larger funds so you're aware of what the activity is proposed for those. Additionally, the proposed annual budget has been posted on the website and provided to you in advance for your review. So as President Mendrick stated, we start May 1st. This year, we're using a new system for our budgeting. In the past, we used a system called OpenGov. And as the new system went online, Kathleen and her team went through and we changed what we call the general ledger. It's basically the listing of accounts on how we list all the numbers. So the current system is now a 2-digit, 3-digit, 4-digit. The 2 digits are the funds, like 01 is a general fund. The 3 digits generally represent the department. 100 is administration and finance, 500 is public works. And with that new system, we're also developing a new template. The OpenGov system had its own template for the budget. Kathleen's working on putting something together that will make sure we have at least all the information you had before and presented in a very readable manner. So before I get too far on the 2027 budget, starting May 1st, I wanted to talk a little bit about how the 2026 budget is doing. And we anticipated when we approved the budget last year a $43,000 surplus. However, during the year, we amended the budget that reflected a $59,000 loss anticipated in the budget. That was due to a mid-year increase in the police pension fund obligations. It happens every year. It's a byproduct of the timing of when the police pension funds are audited, and we get the data for the recommended annual contribution, or you'll hear it called ARC, for the future year. So as part of that process, as the staff is working on their 2027 projection budget, they also project out 2026. Because if we don't have a good idea how this year's going, it's really hard to say where do we stand for next year. And that process has been even more valuable this year because we have an unusual budget in generally a good way. And that is right now, our general fund revenues are exceeding the budget by over $800,000. As someone putting the budget together, seeing that number initially made me really uncomfortable. You would think that would be a good problem, but it's also a very unusual problem. So Kathleen and her team did a lot of digging to figure out exactly what was driving that change. Remember, this is a year when we budgeted anticipating a loss of about $350,000 because of the loss of the Mariano site. So seeing an $800,000 plus to the good was unusual, as I said. There are three primary areas driving that change: sales tax, home rule sales tax, and building permits. All are exceeding budget projections. You see a little note there to the right that says elastic. Those revenues are what I call elastic revenues. Year to year, those can swing wildly. For example, building permits. If the economy's not doing well, or people aren't moving into homes and doing remodeling, we may see a year where building permits just aren't doing well. Or when we see something like development in the commercial business district, we see a lot of permit activity in that year. Because of that, and I'll get into this a little bit more, I try to budget on a fairly stable basis, but plan for some adjustments each year. Sales tax, home rule sales tax are generally linked. They're very closely aligned. But again, depending on the economy's doing, you never know what's going to happen with those. Now, at the same year that revenues are doing really well, our expenditures are trending greater than budget by almost $400,000. This was something that was planned, but we hadn't yet amended the budget because we made some staffing changes during the year. You may recall the police department, they hired 3 police recruits, I think hit in the past fiscal year, and then moving them on to the police officer position or title happened during this fiscal year. In addition, we brought in a new employee, which we'll jump into in a little bit during the fiscal year. So those wages and employment expenses are what I would call inelastic expenses. Those generally, once you commit to them, are going to be ongoing and generally increase at a fairly steady rate. That's why we're very careful about making hiring decisions. I don't want to hire somebody, have them here 1 year and go, oh, sorry, we really didn't need that role, and step them back out of the village. So those are stable, inelastic changes in expenditures. So the good news is right now we are projecting a net positive budget of $425,000 end of year. It's early for us to know this for sure. We need another month or so to try to refine those projections, and we'll bring back a recommendation at the April meeting of where we think we're going to end for the fiscal year, and then should we do anything with that $425,000. And what I mean by do anything, I'll go to and describe that a little bit more in this slide also. Any questions so far? So generally, the departments put their budgets, submit them to the system, and give them to me for review. You see the list here by department. The 3 digits are that 3-digit code I told you what departments have their numbers, and the person responsible for that budget area. You see Tom Burke is working a little bit of everywhere. So before I get into the 2027 budget, and I don't think I've done this with you, I wanted to tell you my approach toward budgeting. Because especially this budget season, I want you to know where I'm coming from, because it, for me, has been my approach for my career, and it's worked fairly well, but the board may have some different approaches. So I talked about revenues, elastic versus inelastic. It's really tough, and I'll keep picking on building permit revenues. It may be one of those things, sorry, Steve, I saw that. It may be one of those things that you see a trend and kind of have a good idea they're going to be moving forward. Steve may also know that we've got people talking about doing other projects, but until they're actually approved through the commissions, you really can't count on them because you just never know what's going to happen. So what we do is we look at a 5-year average of actuals, the actual audited numbers. That's my baseline for figuring what's happening with revenues. So this time, and we'll have more data here soon, sales tax, we've seen a huge jump in a single year, but the 5-year average is much lower. So from a budgeting perspective, do I rely on the 5-year average? Do I rely on what happened last year and put a 3% on top of it? Or do we start looking at the economic trends and try to figure out what's the right combination of those two approaches? And that's my typical approach. Expenditures also are done conservatively. I look at what our long-term obligations are, and I try to limit those. So, for example, we talked probably 6, 7 months ago about the purchase of new large trucks for Public Works. We had the option of leasing those vehicles or purchasing them. And I recommended we purchase them because we have the funds on hand to purchase. I was trying to avoid obligating us to 5 or 7 years of payments going out the door when we don't know exactly what's going to happen 5 years from now. That's an example of me trying to limit those long-term liabilities. I also look for flexibility. So where we can, where we know we've got increases that are happening in an area that may be temporary in nature, that's a great spot for me to look at contractual services or support because those things may be elastic as they move year to year. So we'll lean toward contractual support in those areas. And finally, and the department heads hate this, but I try to limit what cushion there is in the budget. None of our departments like to go over in the budget. Every single person will try to build a little bit of cushion in that budget to make sure they don't go over and they have room to do what they need. Don't tell them that if I see that cushion being a consistent gap of $10,000 per year, I'm just making up a number, in the budget, we'll go through and we'll cut that amount. I may cut that by $8,000 to tighten that cushion up to make sure that we're fairly representing what we need in the budget. If I don't do that, every year we're turning in $400,000 of extra revenue, and we may have missed opportunities to do things that the board and the staff really needed to do because we built in too big a cushion in the budget. That's another area where I'm looking at long-term trends of the actuals to see are we adequately budgeting for what we truly need. So I talked earlier about the surplus and this $425,000 currently projected for the end of this current fiscal year. That's a fair amount of money in a fiscal year. However, as you look at these budgets, you'll see that we've got a number of funds that we're deficit spending. We're pulling from their fund balance. Additionally, the general fund balance target is 55 to 70% of expenditures. Well, we want to make sure we stay within that range if we can. So part of my process when we look at a budget amendment for the current fiscal year is to say where, if we are lucky enough to have that surplus, and if I've done a good job, almost every year you'll see more money coming in than what we projected because I'm conservative on revenues, conservative on expenditures. So what can we do to reduce future expenses? An example is our Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. We are, I won't call it underfunded, but from being 100% funded, we're in the neighborhood of $300,000 shy. In Kenilworth, we paid 3% of wages to IMRF. In Northfield, we pay over 12.5%. So if I can pay down that $300,000, we will save about $180,000 a year in future expenses. I could then shift those funds to another project because it's a long-term savings for the village, or shift those to police pension and help pay that obligation down. So that's one thing to look at. What one-time expenses, is there some capital project we need to invest money for? Do we need to replenish fund balance because we're low in a particular area? All things that I look at when I will bring a recommendation to you in April about the fund balance. So, starting out the 2027 budget, we have talked now for a couple of months about the goals and objectives for the year. This is a list of the projects we've talked about with the amount budgeted for those areas. You've been over it a number of times. I won't read the list to you. If there's any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just keep sliding right along.
I mean, I will say about the centennial, it's, I was on the Kenilworth 100th Centennial, and it was determined by the Village of Kenilworth that that should not be funded by taxpayer dollars because we know, well, they knew that there would be people potentially coming in from outside of the village. And so they actually asked for contributions toward an event. And we've gone through this debate before. Charlie's been there. Giving another taxing authority dollars when they're a taxing authority is a slippery slope. And I just want that to be on the record that I'm not generally in favor of that contribution.
Understood. And Because of the municipal government requirements, we don't intend to net out 55,000. We will be seeking some support and contributions in this project. But even if I got 55,000 in donations, I still have to show 55,000 in expenses in the budget. And I'd also have to budget the 55,000 in revenue. But
One thing for, on the record side of it, Hap Road, I mean, we've talked about Hap Road, all the things going into that. We don't have any specifics as far as dollars, but I know we'll probably talk about that more on the 24th when they're doing their presentation and some of that. But that's, as long as Trustee Fowler is going to be on the record, I'm going to be on the record on that one, making sure that that's something we have in the back of our mind as well as we go through this.
thank you.
I'd like to add to Trustee Elfman's as well. Can't wait to see the finished product of the Hap Road Committee's work, but I did want to also say that, you know, as we think as a board, and I know we've been through this, is I don't even know where to begin as an earmark, but to seriously think about setting aside some funds to at least do some things, whether it's the low-hanging fruit or not, but to, you know, show our intent to improve that corridor.
Thank you. So the 2027 budget, as you saw in the materials we gave you, revenues are up $883,000. That is budget to budget, so fiscal year 26 to fiscal year 27. However, when you look at what the current projection is, the current projected revenues for 26 to 27 is only a $71,000 increase. So you see I'm taking the revenue in a step up, but then I'm not depending strongly on it in future years, because just as a ballpark, our property tax revenue is about $260,000 a year. I'm only projecting an increase of $71,000 for the future year, which gives us some cushion should this sales tax and home rule sales tax revenue not be sustainable or just be a one-year blip. Additionally, you see building permits, $205,000 increase year over year, $70,000 from projection to future year. Our 5-year average is $365,000 in building permit revenue. We're budgeting $200,000 more than that. So it's a bit of a stretch, but based on the conversations with Steve, based on what he sees coming, we think that's a sustainable or actual number of what we'll see. In the expenditure category, expenditures are up $867,000 from the budget. Remember, a portion of that is things that we're doing this year that we understood were happening. All of those expenses right now are tied to personnel-related expenses. So $403,000 is in wages, the new positions we've added and a new position recommended this budget year. Personnel expenses are $485,000. A big chunk of that, almost $300,000, is related to police pension expense increase, both during the year and projected for next year. Our budgeted revenue over expenditures is $28,000. My sweet spot comfort level is in the $75,000 to $95,000 range in a typical budget, but this is a number that I'm comfortable with now based on thinking we can likely hit that. During the budget year, if things are coming in, you know, the board looks at it monthly and we look at it regularly. If it doesn't look like we're going to be hitting the revenues we think we are, there are areas in here that we'll be prepared to come in and say, look, we need to delay this. We need to make some changes. So $28,000 is not very much money, but we have kind of the break glass and emergency ideas should we end up much shorter than expected revenues. Fund balance, $8.5 million. That represents 58% of your expenditures. Remember, target 55 to 70% of projection.
Patrick, I had a quick question on the property tax. With the second half of our property taxes, you know, going to be paid in November, December, and with the reassessment, where does Northfield's chunk, I mean, I'm sure because the reassessments, everything went up. I don't think any of his property taxes are going to go down. Do we have any kind of a figure of where Northfield's portion of that reassessment? I mean, obviously it's going to go up, so Northfield's going to get more money. Do we have any idea of what that amount might be for us?
So are you asking related to timing or related to what the
Dollar amount?
dollar amount? So we normally see, it depends a lot on something called PTEL, Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. So with a fiscal year May 1 budget, it's difficult to know because we're getting 55% of 1 year's known tax increase, which is in the 2.7, 2.9% range. Kathleen? Okay.
Well, I mean, the exact increase won't occur until the second half. I mean, what you're paying now is based on last year. The second half is when it's going to go up. So that's when I think you would see what kind of dollars we potentially would be
So
getting.
we budget for the known 55% and then take a best guess of what's happening for the next calendar year because the PTEL rate through CPI has not been set yet. So that's the difficult thing for May 1 budget year governments. If we're a calendar year, we would already know exactly what that number was. We'd have a little bit more surety about it. Kathleen and the team have been doing a good job staying pretty consistent with their guessing on where that number will be.
So when would we know? Would that be in January then, roughly, when this increase is going to be projected so that we know the amount? Because I know right now you're saying property taxes are 266,814 based on the amount that we know that we get. When would we know with this reassessment what that amount would be?
The number we're recommending is on the known number and a guess of the next. Until the calendar year is finished, the government won't release the consumer price index year-over-year change. So sometime in January or February is when the county puts out a letter that says, here's your PTEL cap for the prior tax year, current fiscal year.
Thank you.
Patrick, just quickly, if you could go back to that
Sure.
page. And I think it should just be stated, when I joined this board, our budget was under $10 million a year. It was 9 million and change. We're 7 years later, and we're at 15.6. It's up 5.6% if you do, a year-over-year basis. Inflation was 2.7%. Not that we're doing anything wrong. I've seen our fund balance now go down from upper 60s to 58. We're using it, I think, appropriately, but I just want people to remember, and I'm not going to be on this board after, got one more budget session to go. Things get slippery. We've got a police pension plan that in 7 years, we're going to be paying $3 million, not $2 million. So I think we have to be very thoughtful on what we're doing here and what we're approving, because I see this, I'm going to get behind it. But I do think there has to be some level of conservatism, and I understand you're being conservative on your revenues and expenses, but we have added staff. Staff is, as you said, it's inelastic, and I love having staff, but when I started here, our property tax bills, the village was only a little over 10% of your property tax bill. This year, it's over 13%. Just keep that in mind. It's grown quite a bit. So I just want to put that out there for the rest of my trustees as we think about this and understand these are real dollars, and they're 50% more than when I started on the board. So I don't know if we're getting 50% more. Maybe we are, and I don't think inflation's a big deal, but I just want to throw that out there for now.
Oh, and also to clarify, the rate that you were looking for is 2.9% for the known portion of the property tax.
Thank you.
Well, Todd, too, that's all relative when you look at what everything's gone up to be. I mean, I think we've held the line pretty well. I don't see us spending wildly. I think, when you look at staff, when you look at everything, insurance and what we've done, I think we've done a great job with the police pension fund as well, putting extra money towards that. So I think we've been very conservative and very conscientious of not raising our portion of property taxes. So I think we've done a good job over the last years we've been together. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's been exorbitant compared to other communities.
I'm not worried about other communities. I'm worried about my community. at the end of the day, honestly. So, and you're right, we've done the right thing with the pension plan, et cetera. We've been very proactive about that. I just want to continue to be proactive in the right way and just know, I don't want, we're going to be citizens again, not trustees, and all of a sudden there's a $22 million budget and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? This is our time to question these expenditures. That, I guess, is my point.
Okay, so going on with that is wage expenses are up about $403,000 budgeted over fiscal year 2026. There's a proposed new position in this budget year. It is a assistant to the village manager. That person, when hired, if approved by the board, will be responsible for enhancing our communication outreach, special projects, contracts and negotiations, and to kind of use a baseball analogy, to be a bit of a utility player. Somebody that would be experienced enough and out of college long enough that they're comfortable in local government, and we can give them projects and let them primarily operate on their own without direct oversight. The reason I picked this title and this type of position is because this is one that generally the person rotates in and out every 2 to 4 years. So it's somebody that's gaining their feet in local government management, and they're trying to climb the ladder. So the reason I like it is it gives us flexibility that if in 2 to 3 years we don't have as much need, or we're seeing revenue or expenditure-related problems, we can make the decision to let that person leave through attrition and not be obligated to a long-term career employee.
Which is also a position we used to have here as well. And also when you talk about mentoring, and I see mentoring's in the budget as well, it's someone potentially that if you decide to go somewhere else, or we can mentor them and have a seamless transition potentially if you decided to leave or go somewhere else, or if you take ill or any of that stuff. So I think it's a great idea to create depth in the organization, which is what we talked about with that and mentoring.
This person would be kind of 2 steps down for the manager position, but it's somebody that can grow and be stronger with the village knowledge.
I'm very supportive of it. We've had conversations about it. My question is, when do you anticipate that person potentially coming on board? As it relates to the budget.
Sure. We would probably wait a couple of months after the budget's approved before we make any decisions. I want to get I am still uncomfortable with the revenues. This budget has been one of the more difficult ones for me because I don't trust the numbers because it's so unusual, but they're there. Kathleen, show me the data. I believe it, but it's just really unusual for me to see that kind of change. So I want to get a few more months down the road before I put out for this position and make sure that it's sustainable.
I think that's a good approach to take right now, till we get the bow tied on last year's budget and where our numbers are exactly. And I know it'll take you a little bit of time to write the job description and think through all of the things you might want this person to do. So I think that's a wise way to approach this.
With this, I mean, because it is an outlier year, a lot of it's sales tax related for different things, right? Should we be seriously considering maybe every quarter we come back and have a budget review, or see if that trend holds? Or, because I mean, generally we're doing this, not necessarily, I mean, we look at it all the time, but as a board, should we consciously make sure that we have maybe every 3 months come back and look at this and see if the projections are sticking the way they're supposed to or not, so we can make a mid-year adjustment if we have to? Or, I mean, I'm just trying to think out loud
Sure.
as the newer person here on all of this, so.
That's one approach. The other is Kathleen and I can insert a new section within the monthly budget financial report that talks about how we're doing versus forecast. So it's in front of you every month as a data point, and I'll be sure to bring it up during a board meeting if we are seeing something coming forward. Rather than rating a quarter, we'll bring it up that month.
Yeah, because there'll be some other things too. I mean, digging into it, revenue side, even like all of our funds, like our CDs and everything, and you have them projected a little bit lower, which makes sense because there's probably going to be rate cuts at some point, right? So we have to almost anticipate or potentially be able to shift if we have to quickly if things do change. And that keeps us in that 58% area as well. We don't want to get out of whack with that. So.
Yeah. I think that, Patrick, your suggestion of visiting this a bit more often is good because God forbid that it would have been a deficit and not a, not the other way. We'd be having a different conversation tonight, but to feel like we at least have a better sense, because some of these things, obviously, when building permits come in, and so some of these things, while they're elastic, they still, what time of year they're coming, so we can, I'd hate to think back that we didn't do something we wanted to do because we didn't find out until much later in the game that we had additional funds coming in. So, and I can't think of anything this year that we would have done differently, but I just think it's, to Ed's point, just keeping us thinking about it more often is I think, a good plan.
Well, this new position, the assistant to the village manager, is something that the board brought up to me during interviews 2 years ago. As something to look at and see if there's a need. And finally, budget-wise, I think we've reached the point where we can comfortably do that.
Yep.
In the, when you do have the ability or the opportunity, I should say, I know you have the ability, it's the opportunity, to do your job description. I know I've brought it up multiple times, but I think one of the things that we could use some assistance with, and maybe this will give you the opportunity to be able to focus on some other areas that interest you as well, but again, is someone who can focus on economic development.
I like that. I want to just jump in quickly. I think we've all thought about that a lot over the last year and how to help Steve and his department, and especially with everything that's now coming into the village. I like the way that Steve and Patrick are trying to tackle that right now, and to have our village manager as one of the main points of contact is, I think, really advantageous for us. When I talk to people that are applying for different things in the village, they talk about how responsive we are and that it comes from the top. And so my vision of this assistant to the village manager gives Patrick more freedom to be helpful to Steve and to attend area development meetings where he can talk to developers. So yes, we need more help with economic development. It's just maybe a little switching of who actually is the helper, which way it goes. But
I think I did say that we'll give him more time.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Give Patrick time to focus on that if that's something he really.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, the top two positions you see here, the assistant to the village manager and the building official, are both designed to free up Steve and I from, I hate to say, doing things that we at our level shouldn't be doing. I know it doesn't sound right, but there are correspondences and things that you don't want a highly compensated employee doing that we can have someone else doing, learning, and getting stronger while we focus in the areas you really need us. The building official position is something the board agreed to mid-year last year, and Steve was successful in finding an excellent candidate to fill that role. And although new employees are a little bit more of a drag initially on time, he is learning quickly and really providing value. I think we'll pay some good rewards for Steve and his ability to manage other areas of the department. Police officer position, I just love to announce this almost every time we can. We are finally making great progress in this area. The chief has done an amazing job getting the department staffed. But more importantly than staffed and positions filled is finding the right fit. I want to say, especially in police and law enforcement right now, it's easy to find people, but it's easy to find bad people. And the chief has done a great job at intermixing both experienced officers and brand new officers. And I don't know how much you have interaction with our police officers as far as seeing them around town, but the demeanor of the department is changed. It is like a new department. And he's just done a fantastic job with that and continues to do so. So thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Chief.
And then finally, part of this wage expenses is cost of living adjustment plan for staff. We looked at what's happening in the neighboring areas. We're recommending a 3% cost of living adjustment. Related to employment expenses, when you increase your personnel expenses, often employment expenses follow suit. Health insurance is up a large amount, which initially surprised me. However, when we add a number of positions that were budgeted yet not filled, we hadn't been budgeting the health insurance expense for those vacant slots. And they're newer career personnel, so our health insurance costs go up. IMRF, our payments going up about $25,000, and as I mentioned before, the increase in police pension. So those are the primary highlights for the general fund. Before I go to the next fund, any questions there? And we're going to, at the end here, we're going to stick around to some trustee requests. Okay. Just a high-level overview of the water and sewer fund. This is included part and parcel with your capital meeting that we had at the last committee of the whole meeting talking about projects. Revenues for 2027 are about 4.5 million, expenditures 5.6 for a negative 1.1 million. That is because we've programmed about a $2 million expense for the HAP and Harding water main project. On a general year, the water fund on average brings in $800,000 a year to the positive. So you may recall during the capital meeting, I mentioned that we're going to try to go to an every other year project, use that fund balance, replace bad water mains, pause, design, and then go to the next year. And not, I'm sorry.
Patrick, on the water issue, it says proposed increase of 2.2%. We had inflation of 2.7% last year, and I think we're going to be higher this year. I just don't know why we're not increasing it at least at the rate of inflation, because any of the projects that we're going to be undertaking are going to be at least at inflation or above in terms of the cost associated. So we're kind of falling behind if we're not at least keeping that at inflation, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree with the falling behind. What I had done last year was just pass through the rate increase coming from the village of Winnetka.
Understood, but,
So-
but that's just the water. They're not paying for our pipes and water main breaks and all the things that we have that we've already identified as problematic within the system. So, and I know Matt, very early on in his tenure, we were talking about this. There were significantly higher increases that were proposed. That got peeled back. But I feel like we are doing a disservice long-term if we are not at least at inflation, maybe even a little bit more, personally.
Anyone want to comment? I have to say I agree with Todd on this one. I think we can't think that we don't have expenses when inflation is going up. Things are more expensive for us to do as well. And the water and sewer fund is never really meant to be subsidized by the village because we can't afford it, and it's the residents that use it. So it's something we should think about. I don't know how we move on that, Patrick.
I just ran a quick calculation. If you wanted to go closer to the CPI 3% range, that would take you from 1203 current year to future year to 1239. So just 9 cents per 100 cubic feet greater than what was proposed.
I think the other piece that's kind of forgotten, and I know everyone's touched on a little bit, but the village owns the pipes. and we're expected to maintain them. So it's not just the delivery and the cost of delivery, it's paying for the car that delivers it. And I think that I agree with Trustee Fowler that we do need to look at a potential increase because our costs aren't going down to maintain our equipment. And it's everything.
Is there an amount that you'd like me to calculate out or a number you're comfortable with?
I think CPI makes sense, based off, That's your standard going rate on everything. And then is it pretty consistent with increases coming from the Winnetka cost aspect of this? I mean, is that,
Pass through.
yeah, it's a pass-through, right?
Same difference.
Yeah, okay. But it's pretty consistent year to year that we have.
Their
this.
contract is built, it's got a nexus to the CPI and the adjustments they give us. Okay, we will adjust that to 3%, because I think I saw a number of nodding heads, and bring that forward for you for May 24th. I'm sorry, March 24th. Okay. Capital Equipment Fund, this is a fund we talked about previously. Revenues over expenditures of 1.1 million. Part of the change or the drop you see in the revenue from fiscal year 26 budget to fiscal year 27 is related to an extra transfer from the general fund to the water fund, and changes in grants and lease proceeds. But the main culprit, if you will, for that reduction in revenue is we took a one-time additional transfer last year to try to buttress the capital equipment fund. Motor fuel tax, this is a fund where we don't have a lot of control over the revenue. It comes from the state. However, we are required to keep it in a separate fund we call the MFT fund. You'll see expenditures for the fiscal year are greater than our typical. This is because we received special revenue from the state several years ago, I think in the 4 to 5 year ago range, that needs to be expended this calendar year, and it's Rebuild Illinois. So we're programming about $380,000 of road improvements to clear those funds out and bring some of the roads up to standard that were noted as in marginal or poor in our recent road analysis. And that's it for that. The next step in this process is talking about trustee requests. So any questions about the budget or funds that I've put forward so far?
I did have a question, and you had put in there, at least you had showed us, the repainting of fire hydrants on a 5-year schedule. And Tom, maybe you remember, it was not that long ago that we repainted the fire hydrants, and I've been driving around and I don't see any sort of wear and tear on the painting yet. And so this is like one of those areas where I go, is that something we can delay so that's not in the budget so we have more funds for other things? And maybe there's a reason, Fire Chief, that we want to repaint them, but they were repainted, they were poorly done, and they had to bring back the guys because they put maybe the wrong paint or wrong application on them. But that was not, it was 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 7?
I was gonna say less than that, actually. I think, I was gonna say 5, 3 to 5, I think. And there was an issue with the company that did it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a good job at all. And when they came back, it was an okay job, but nothing that's great. Not to talk for Matt Huebner, is that something that we could put off, I imagine? We still go out and test the hydrants every year, make sure they work, make sure that we can get the ports and everything like that opened up. But like I said, I would hate to talk for him and see where we're at, but I think that is a project that we could discuss.
And I'm not looking to, maybe there's a logical reason, but it did seem like it was done relatively recently, and I kind of scratched my head going, wait, how often are we repainting? What is the typical time frame that you repaint fire hydrants?
You know, I think it matters because it's where you're at, your weather. There's a lot to it. Salt from the roads do a lot to it, so it's I don't know if there's a set. You know, we have our mandates when we're supposed to be testing them, flowing.
Sure.
We are doing stuff like that with the outside of the hydrants. You know, there's different things you can do too. You can put reflective caps on them. We like to paint the top of the operating nuts so we know what they flow. When we're seeing it's green, things like that. But to say they last 5 years or 8 years, like I said, we had issues with the company that did it.
Yeah.
Matt's on vacation this week, so when he comes back, let me talk to him and see if we can
It's
push
just
this
a
out.
question. It was one of those things because it seemed to have been done recently. That was all.
It's a good question. I know Alan was looking for something like pink hydrants. Was that your request? Oh, no. Chargers. So let us look at that, and I'll get you an update at the board meeting. Looks like no for the pink, sorry. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So the next piece is one where annually I send an email out to the trustees to say, is there something that you in particular would like to see that we include in the budget that may not be currently included in the budget? So what we do is we circulate that email, I put it in this list, and you see it ahead of time, so you see what's there. So it's kind of time to turn it over to you, President Mendrick, and see if you want to step through these.
Sure. I think let's go through these just quickly, one at a time. I'd love to get our staff's input on whether these things are necessary or not, or required. So the pole-mounted speed display, Chief, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, thank you. I would say that it's a nice tool to have. I think in terms of operationally, lower down in the list, the solar-powered trailer would be a much more effective tool for us right now. So the disadvantage of the signs is they are, as Patrick indicated, they're sort of semi-portable. And we're kind of limited as to where we can put them depending on the type of sign we order and the type of pole that's mounted. So some of them, for example, like the one on Central Avenue, the one on Northfield Road, is portable, but it needs a large enough pole to be able to support it.
Yeah.
So for us, the solar-powered trailer is a more valuable tool because it's quick and easy for us to move around to different spots to be able to gather data from different complaints and things.
And that would make us have two, one that isn't solar powered and one that is, if this was approved.
Correct. So the one we have now is about 10 years old.
Yeah.
It is functional, it does work, but because it's not solar powered, we have to literally bring it back and plug it in. It can last on a side street that does not see a lot of traffic. We might be able to get a week out of it. If we were to put it on Willow Road, we'd get maybe about a day and a half.
Okay.
Is that something you can get grants for, Chief?
So, yeah, we've tried twice with the ComEd Powering Safe Communities. Years ago, I tried through Safe Routes to School. We've tried through the Motor Club AAA. We just have not been successful
Got
with
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think the nice thing about the trailer, I mean, you can get a trailer for the cost of 2 signs, is speeding is a problem all over town, no matter how you look at it. And you know, I've had people come to me and, you know, our police do the best they can and can only be in so many places at once. But having this trailer and the flexibility of moving it pretty readily is probably the best option of the two, in my opinion.
Yeah. Anybody over on this side? Sorry, Tom, were you done?
I just was gonna say, and do you feel the same way as, I mean, it's.
You're the police chief. You know, it's just like, if you could have a choice of the two, which would you prefer, the trailer or the signs, is my question, I guess.
No, I would prefer the trailer. Yeah.
I like the idea that if which we often do, have comments come into to the V group, or someone, you know, approaches us individually to say, this is a real problem on my street. It's a lot easier to get the trailer there. It's more visible, and hopefully more effective too than the signs that are, I think, kind of high up too. I don't even notice if people see them or not.
Exactly, because the signs, depending on, the trailer gives us the advantage of putting it wherever we need to. We can sneak
Right.
it into different areas, whereas we're depending on having a sign in the exact right spot to be able to post it. The other advantage of the trailer is it can collect data, and we can pull data out of it and show people, okay, well, you reported a problem, this is what we're seeing, and then we can determine, is it worth putting an officer out there to do some enforcement, or is there not really enough of a problem to justify having an officer spend time there? And that data, for us, is very valuable.
Well, and I think the other piece too is, everybody knows that there's that speed limit sign on Sunset Ridge. The novelty's worn off. They don't care about it anymore, right? I mean, they do. I saw a car the other morning, actually, I went to that, I'll say it out loud, I went to 2 Teslas, and I don't know if they were test driving, 85 miles an hour on that sign down Sunset Ridge Road.
Yeah.
I drove 2 Tesla out of where I was going and went and talked to the manager. I got the license plate, and I don't think those guys work there anymore.
Okay.
But that sign, they do lose their effectiveness, and having that ability to move it around really, changes.
Yeah, I think if they were easy enough to move around, you could kind of mitigate that a little bit. But again, you're dependent on having a spot to put it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the data collection is big, especially now that you have more officers on staff, right? So you can start figuring out where you have to post people. I will say the pole-mounted sign on Willow, almost to what Trustee Whitaker's saying, I don't know if people use that as a challenge or what the idea is
Yeah.
there, but it's wild coming through there. So the trailer side makes a lot more sense, especially, they say, if it can give you data of where to efficiently use people, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Okay, are we in agreement? Oh,
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, both would be great. And I know that, the people that don't live around here a lot of times, because if they're from the city or different areas, when they see that flashing sign, I've seen it on Willow Road, I've seen it on Northfield Road, on Central, it does make them slow down. They're not sure if they're being ticketed like in the city when you have the speed cameras and all the other stuff. So I think a lot of people that don't know them don't know if they're being, picked up on camera. Yes, the solar powered trailer we put in for the last couple of years, I've been pushing forward. I think it's something we really need to get. And I know we've tried grants for the last few years, it hasn't been effective, but it's just kind of a waste of time and energy to constantly have to bring that in, charge it up, where you said you could go from, if there's a problem on Willow Road, you put it there for a week. If there's a problem on Orchard Lane, wherever,
Right.
you can move it around directly. You don't have to go back and charge it. Now the community service officer's got to go back and forth and pick it up and drop it off. So, yeah, down the line, in the perfect world, it'd be nice to have these in a couple other areas, but the trailer clearly is the way to go, and I'd love to hopefully see we can put that in the budget and get it finally in their hands.
all right, anybody else? Okay, so let's radar trailer in, pole-mounted speed display, no at this point. But I think always looking for possible grant applications. I mean, it would be ideal to have 2 solar-powered trailers and not have to have the one to be recharged all the time. So where we see opportunities for grant applications, it would be great to keep our eye on that one.
And if somebody comes into the police department wanting to make a donation, the chief will let them know about the speed signs.
There you go. Okay. So Trustee Gallen and Whitaker, on the sidewalk extension projects, I think we're on track with the sidewalk committee's recommendations, but let's just revisit. You can tell us what's going on with Wagner Road right now.
Sure, I actually put this on here just for a reminder that we're changing the capital improvement project list to list out the sidewalk committee projects. So I just wanted to bring that back to your attention, so that's there. We have one project included in this current fiscal year, but we'll keep that updated for future fiscal years.
Okay.
Wagner sidewalk is out to bid. It's fully designed, and I think we're not expecting many comments back from IDOT. So they were, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago, putting it out to bid, if I remember correctly.
It opens this Thursday.
Yeah. So we're waiting to hear from that, and then we'll talk to the contractor to see if it's a current fiscal year project or next fiscal year. We have funds in either year, depending on what the need is.
We still have to order the equipment or after that, or we have the equipment, now you're just looking for the person to put it in?
I think 2 different things. The Wagner sidewalk project will be.
I'm sorry, God, I'm
just
thinking about
the contractor.
crosswalks, okay.
The equipment has been ordered for the Bosworth rapid flashing beacon.
Okay.
And as we saw last time, that equipment just kind of trickles in. Like, I think the first thing that came in last time was the push button alert for this, and we didn't even have a signal.
Yeah,
It wasn't nice, so.
and I guess the reason that those 2 things came out of my mouth like that is that I know we've talked a lot about making sure that whenever we're doing road projects, that we're reviewing whether there are opportunities for crosswalks. And that's something that we have talked about. Ed, I know you've been a champion of that. So while we don't have, funds earmarked for that, is that something that we would want to consider? I think we know there's a couple other places that we'd like to consider them right now. Does that fall into this trustee requests and suggestions that I didn't submit early?
I think the email just came in. Those are about a $45,000 spend, and it depends a lot on where we're putting it in the county interface. If we could get one in a year, in my opinion, that would be good while we're focusing on water main projects, et cetera.
Okay. Okay.
If we end up having a great fiscal year and you want to try to find a location for another, we will. And also, I mentioned the Rebuild Illinois projects. That's primarily for road resurfacing, but if we do a road reconditioning or further rebuild, we're definitely looking for abilities to put in crosswalks.
Okay.
And that's, for me, I think what's important is it's trying to plan long-term of if we know we're working on this road, what are all the things we need to do at the same time, just so we don't have to go back and jackhammer and re-cement. If we're doing it at once, just get it all done at once, right? And I think that it saves you money long-term as well, right? Because then you're not doing the engineering over and over. And there's a lot of places, especially as we talk Skokie Valley Trail coming in at some point, all that, trying to make sure we're really thinking where those connections are to get the village connected across different areas. For everyone's awareness, Patrick and I talked a lot about kind of the north side of the village, for example, connecting the Skokie Valley Trail all the way over to like Sunset Ridge Road, what that would look like. There's going to be neighborhoods that have to cut through all that, but how do you kind of have this working plan continue to work and not have to rewrite things up all the time, I think is good, efficient use of all these funds.
I just had one other, and I know we talked about it earlier, and I don't know if my email got lost with yours or if Ed sent the email and that got lost also, but regarding just the HAP Road Committee and some money for a potential project or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yes, and I want to talk about the street light at the corner of Hap and Orchard. I am not inclined to put any money aside for anything on the Hap Road until we hear from the committee, which we're 2 weeks away from hearing. And yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And really to understand what they have prioritized for, this group who's come together and worked so hard, had 900 and some responses to the survey, to really understand what it is that they think are the priorities. Maybe this street light will show up there, maybe it won't. It's not also a road we own, so the idea of putting a street light in there, I think that there's a lot of information we still need before we do anything on Hap Road. And as I said at the last board meeting, we certainly want to try on the 24th to put some things in motion quickly of their recommendations, any that we can do that are not expenses. I bring up the speed of the road from 30 to 25. If that still comes to the top as something that the committee is interested in, again, no real expense to the village to do that, and could have some real fast, we think, impact. So unless anyone feels differently, I'd like to table this until we get that report in 10 days' time.
I would like to discuss the streetlight because regardless of what the HAP Road Committee comes up with, and no disrespect to them, that intersection is highly underlit. It's not safe for people that are driving, walking, riding, especially from 4 o'clock in the fall until now springtime when we just changed the clocks. It's really dark. For whatever reason, the way the lighting is laid there, And my suggestion with this, and I know I met with Patrick and I had Mead come out a couple years ago to give us pricing on a couple different things with this. My suggestion was that we locate this streetlight where it's on our property, where that means on the corner up here, so that any work on, that was done on Hap Road or anything with that intersection, it wouldn't change having the light up there. So I think it's important. We're always talking about safety. I know I've talked to different people about some of the safety issues with different things that we try to work on, whether it's crosswalks, sidewalks. But this intersection is way too dark. And I think it's dangerous, and I think it's just a matter of time before somebody walking, riding, or even someone driving, and it's not the configuration, it's the light itself. And I mean, if you go out there tonight, if you go out there after this meeting, you'll see how dark it is. And when you go to where Mariano's is, where they put that nice light there, where the post office, it's well lit, as it should be. But this is dreadfully underlit, and I think for the price that we're talking about, and if we locate it on our property, regardless of what happens with Hap Road, it needs to be done. It needs to be taken a better look at, whether we have to take a quick walk outside after one of these meetings and see how dark it is and how dangerous it is. I've been putting this in for the last few years, and I think regardless what happens, this needs to really be, probably put in here. And it's not a lot of money for what we're getting for it.
Charlie, go ahead.
I'd like to jump in on this one, partly because I think this is what I was talking about a little bit with crosswalks. I agree with you, underlit, big time. You shouldn't have to carry like flashlights around with you when you walk on the sidewalk. But I think this is one of those discussions as part of the broader plan. The library is going to be redone at some point. Is there going to be potential lighting on that side that could be part of this? We have the corner here we could look at. We have up and down all of Hap Road. So to me, I'm hesitant to go for one light versus what does it look like when we go through the whole corridor. And I'm just always trying to look at that bigger picture rather than, and I get what you're trying to do, totally get it. But it's more, to me, do we want to put spending out for one versus what's it going to cost us to do multiple and have it all kind of work cohesively together? And then there's a lot of other folks we got to bring into these discussions. I mean, police side of the world, all that, what good practice is, things like that, to make sure that fits how they need to view it and all those things. So I agree with you on the concept, but I think we have to think, what's this corridor going to look like long-term and how do we tie it all together? And granted, I would have liked this all to be done yesterday, obviously, but I think we just have to think in those bigger pictures on some of this, so.
Well, I agree. I agree the corridor needs to be looked at in the Hap Road project in its entirety. However, if you go down any part of Hap Road, it is clearly the darkest portion of this entire area. And the fact that you've got the businesses and you've got people that work in that area, from Metamorphosis to all the businesses crossing to that parking lot, it's dangerous. And because there's no even crosswalk, like that would be another area that we talked about, down the line to put a crossing, the pedestrian crossing, but it's clearly well underlit. It's just not safe, period.
Charlie, I agree with you, but I also do think 2 weeks is not a long period of time to wait.
Oh, no.
Right, so,
I'd like to include this,
yeah,
that's all.
so I think that's the case. I'm in agreement with Ed. I've talked to Patrick about this. I talked to previous village managers as well. The entire village campus needs to be relit. At night, it's very dark. I brought it up to the chief. I think it's very uninviting to have a white LED light in front of the police station. It's not comforting, if you will. If somebody's coming in there at night, it just doesn't have that sense of place, and the entire campus is that way. At night, once the lights go down, you drive through, you don't even see the village hall on the left-hand side.
Right.
You really don't, and that, to me, is unfortunately a shame. So I agree with you, Ed. I think a broader conceptual plan should be part of it, including a light on that corner, getting something done. As long as, if you get it incorporated, then get the light up there and then worry about the other stuff later. But that's just my thoughts.
And that's my point. That's why I'm bringing it up. It should be part of this plan, and I just want to put it out there.
And the other thing, I'll jump in on that too, is the new parking lot over here as well. Then it's tying all of that together as well. I mean, to the point of walking, going to parking lots and all that. So to me, I keep thinking about this whole area and like what And hopefully in 2 weeks, that's part of the presentation.
So this $25,000 number, is this something, Trustee Orth, you got a few years ago from Meade Independent, or is this coming from Village estimates, or where did that number come from?
This is something that I, early on when Patrick first arrived, and I noticed the need a long time ago, and I talked to him, and I actually met out there with Meade, and actually Patrick was coming back from lunch, and the engineer and the man from Meade and myself all walked around, looked at it, some different things, and he also looked at some of the other lighting to make sure that the lighting was tied in and working, and he actually fixed a couple of the streetlights while he was out there that day that weren't working, and that's where these numbers came from. And then there was another price, I think it was about $11,000 for a more light pole, not just a big stainless steel one, but more of a fancier one. So there was a couple different options. I didn't even put that in because basically we need some kind of lighting. So I think that, if we go with a big change for the whole road, if we go with that, then that could be part of it. It's just about getting something,
Well, I think if we're going to, my only point is if we're going to consider this even on the 24th, we need to have a real-time today's price number.
Sure.
I don't know if that's something that is possible to do in this amount of time I just am concerned that $25,000 isn't really the correct number. And if we're going to consider this, we want to put in the right number too, if it's something we actually want to think about doing, so.
I don't recall seeing the initial proposal, so it's hard for me to answer, but if you have that, you could probably ask me to update it and give you current pricing.
Sure, I've got their contact information based on the crosswalk and some of the other stuff that we've talked about, so I can have them give us another updated price and.
And of course, we still have to get 3 estimates for work of this scope, so,
Right.
but just to have a more current ballpark number, I think would make sense. So if we can do that for the 24th, hopefully.
Try.
I know you're going on vacation too, so.
Well, I can make a phone call to me, that's
Okay.
simple.
All right, great. Okay, what else is on the list? Okay.
Just one thing.
So this is something that we talked about, yeah, I've got it right here on the screen now. The live streaming of the additional commission meetings, and I didn't hear from my fellow trustees that there was a lot of interest in pursuing this. As you all know, we saw in January the communications report that told us the number of people that are actually watching these meetings live or reviewing them. And since that time, we have gone to recording all of the commission meetings so that people, if they have an interest, can listen to those at a later date. So I am not inclined to continue to keep this on the budget, and I'd be happy to take comments from anybody if anybody has any thoughts on that. So to be clear, what I'm really concerned about is that it's not as simple as just pressing a button. There has to be a staff person here or an outside vendor here to handle this, because oftentimes, while Melissa has input on meetings and additional things that are going on, she's also here to make sure that the live stream is running. So at any amount of time that it takes us to have a ZBA meeting or a P&Z, which sometimes can be long, it's an additional expense for an outside staff person, but because you can't ask the person who's running the meeting, meaning Steve, to also be responsible for the live stream.
Tracy, I'm fully behind you on this. We have all been to various commissions. If you're watching live stream, you can't ask a question.
Right.
And that's the point of a lot of these commissions, is that it's for the neighbors and the impact there. It's interesting information, but I have found that those people that are interested parties show up.
Right?
So I would tend to agree with you.
Okay.
Not tend, I totally agree
Yep.
with you.
Just a question. Any sense of how the committees feel about this proposal one way or the other, or the chairs?
I had conversations with, I think, almost every one of them, and it ran the gamut of, some thought they were already being recorded for the commissions that aren't in fact, to chairs who said, You know, these are people who are not elected officials, and now you're asking them to be recorded. So there was some concern about people wanting to be a part of that. So, you know, in my view, these are volunteers, and I'm not inclined to make them be live streamed. Again, we are here because we knowingly took this job and knew what would be involved. The commissions are helping out at my ask and other presidents' ask in the past, so I don't want to make it uncomfortable for anyone either.
So are the current meetings being recorded like we are right now? I mean, this is being live streamed right now or not?
This is being live streamed, yes.
So
They're being audio recorded.
right, the other ones are audio recorded. So if someone
Correct.
go to the village website, they can listen to, and just like they're also being, the official minutes are being taken by an outside gentleman as well from
In,
CBA. and-
depending on which
Right.
commission it is, but yes.
CBA and architecture, I know, because we get
Yes.
the minutes.
Where there is potential litigation involved in anything that the commission does, those have to be professionally recorded. Okay, anything else? All right, what else is on our agenda?
Next steps, we'll make some adjustments in the document, bring back this to you for the 24th of the budget hearing. In the request for board action, we'll list out the changes made in the document, and the board, at your pleasure, will have the document ready to be adopted that meeting. There's a couple mentions of Hap Road. If something comes up during the discussion related to Hap that evening, you can make changes on the fly. So you could say, hey, Patrick, put in X dollars for this project, and we will include that as the enabling ordinance for the budget.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is Hap Road then doing their presentation on the 24th?
They'll be at the committee of the whole meeting, yes.
Okay.
All right, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Thanks, everyone.